Hello everybody, my name is Bob Conacher with Omega Research and Development. Today we're at Lakeside Audio here in Conroe, Texas with some of my favorite guys in the industry. And we'll be doing a full blade install using an AL1830 EDPB and an OL Blade AL with CH4 firmware. The vehicle we're working with is a 2008 Dodge Challenger. This vehicle is actually very similar to any of the Chryslers you'll do with a tip start key. Like the Chrysler 300, Chrysler Town & Country, Dodge Caravan, Challengers, Chargers, Durangos, Journeys, Magnums, Ram trucks, and Jeep Grand Cherokees. We picked this vehicle because it seems to be a vehicle that intimidates a lot of installers. But I think, as you'll see, with the right interface, the right remote start system, and good installation practices, is one of the easiest installs out there. You know, I always hear of installers talk about how difficult remote start and vehicle security installs have become these days. You know, I completely disagree. With a good system like the 1830 and a blade interface, most installs are actually simpler. The blade interface uses the vehicle's existing network to communicate with the factory systems to control things like door locks, trunk release, factory arm, factory disarm, power lift gates, trunk release circuits, to sense door triggers and trunk triggers, brake pedal status, tachometer. All this with as little as one wire on like Chevy's Class 2 data or LAN systems, or two wires like this Chrysler vehicle we're about to work on. The blade module can also interface with other types of vehicle data systems that only communicate between one piece of equipment to another, like from a driver's door module to a BCM. You can find systems like this in Hondas, Toyotas, Acuras, Nissans, just to name a few. Well, I think they're ready for us out there. Let's go ahead and get started on the install. Alright, there she is. Bullet, hey, go ahead and grab that 1830 and that blade module, and I'll take it up front and get it flashed. You can go ahead and take the car apart if you want. Alright, now we'll take our 1830, just remove the cover from the back, take the blade module, slide it right into place. We'll take the whole unit, plug it into the computer via the OL loader, use the black port, and then an available USB port on your computer. Then you'll go flash your module. Alright guys, we're currently on the Omega WebLink site. Some of you guys might be using the older site, which is the OmegaKits.com site, but all new firmwares will be kept on the Omega WebLink site, which does require you to register to gain full access. If you haven't registered yet, I recommend you do it right away, because in time we will redirect this web address to this site and you'll have to register at that point. The new site is where we keep all the newer firmwares, the 80-bit Ford firmware, all the clone firmwares. The 40-bit Ford you can do with one key, the Mitsubishi firmwares, the new Hyundai and Kia firmwares, the GM7 firmware for the new Camaros. So all the new firmwares will be kept on this site, so register for it as soon as possible. If this is the first time you're using the OL loader on your computer, you will need to go up and download the Omega WebLink plugin and just follow the installation wizard and it'll walk you through the install. Before we go any further, I really think it's worth mentioning that where most people go wrong when they're trying to get their WebLink plugin to work is they don't accept Internet Explorer's security warning that'll say this website is trying to run the following add-on. Do you want to allow it? And you have to allow the add-on to run. If you ignore it or close it, the site cannot communicate with the OL loader and in turn cannot communicate with the interface to flash it. Now that we got all that out of the way, let's go ahead and flash the module. We'll click the button in the top right hand portion of the screen. The site will detect the blade cartridge inside the remote starter. It'll also detect what firmware we're running in the remote starter itself. If there was a firmware update available, it'd give us a little warning that looks like this and ask us to update the firmware now. This is important because let's say that we need to make some changes. We need to add some new D2D commands, or we need to increase tack sensing thresholds. We can make these changes and post the new firmware on this site so you can update it yourself. Actually, as of August 1st, 2011, our most recent update to the system's firmware was the addition of some D2D commands for our new smartphone hardware. If you didn't have the ability to update the system's firmware and you had a customer that had an older version of this platform, they would have had to purchase a brand new system to use the new smartphone hardware. But now, all you need to do is update the firmware from this site and you're ready to go. One of my favorite things about using a 1630, an 1830, or a 2030 with a Blade module is it does give you a gateway into the Remote Start's programmable features. Just click the Configure Starter button. It'll read all the programmable features in their current setting from the Remote Starter, and then you can go through and make changes. Like I know this guy wants auto arm with lock, he wants auto rearm with lock. But we could go down and change lots of things. We could change siren duration. Say he only wants it 30 seconds. Say chirp volume, wants it low, it's already set at low. We can even go in here and change the installer programmable features. Say we were to need double pulse unlock or 3-second or total closure. You can go through the manual, get a little bit better explanation on what some of these features are. But you can change them all from the site. Once you're done, just click Save. Alright, well let's go ahead and go up and flash the module. We're going to go to Flash by Vehicle. We'll go ahead and select our vehicle, Dodge 2008 Challenger. At this point there's two different things we can do. We can go ahead and finish the flash process, or we can configure features, configure the module features. Go ahead and click here. Alright, so we can go in here and we can turn on and off features. Say we have a customer that doesn't want or doesn't want to pay for priority door unlock. We can turn on and off things like trunk release. Say we have a customer that lost one of their OEM remotes, so they most definitely don't want the aftermarket alarm control from OEM remote. And then once we're done, we click Save and Flash. We're going to go ahead and turn these back on real quick because we know our customer wants those. And we click Save and Flash. There we go. We're done. You will see the flashing complete check mark. The only thing left to do now is download the install guide. The install guide that the site gives you is the exact manual for that firmware and for the install you're doing. I know some kit manufacturers just throw all their manuals online and expect you to find the right one. Well, not here. We'll go ahead and just click the manual. Click Open. Alright, there's our manual. Let's go over a couple things and then we'll go back and see how Bullet's doing. One of the things I really like about Omega Link manuals or Blade manuals is the amount of information they provide to you. You'll see on this one, it'll give you a full vehicle chart, let you know exactly what vehicles it works, what year, what install to use, what features they cover. You can see this one does data immobilizer bypass, it'll do priority door unlock, door lock, door unlock, OEM arm, OEM disarm, trunk release, door status, trunk status, brake pedal status, tachometer, and data mux ignition control. What that means to you is there is no reason to make all these analog connections. You can just cut them short when you prep the alarm. All these features or all these functions will be taken care of with these connections from the Blade module. So you got your CAN high, your CAN low, and your ignition. So just these connections right here will take care of all these features. Another thing that the manual gives you is a wire cross-reference chart. You look up your vehicle, it'll tell you what wires you need, what connector they're in, what pin position they're in the connector, where to find them, what their polarity is. Where a lot of kits will just say can high, can low. Okay, where's the can high? Where's the can low? This will give you detailed information on where to find your wires. It'll also give you a detailed drawing of what connections you need to make, what a certain component in the vehicle will look like, what the connector looks like. It'll give you drawings of the pinouts to show you. You can refer back to your wire cross reference up here to know what those colors are. Well, alright, that should do us for now. Let's go ahead and print this manual and go outside and see what Bullet's doing. Alright guys, we're back out here in the shop with my buddy Bullet. He's already got the vehicle completely torn apart. He's already mounted the siren. I found a real cool place for it. Underneath the cover, behind the front grille. Very secure place. He's ran the wire in factory wire loom. Looks extremely clean. The first thing I like to do before we start any wiring is find all our connection points. This install really only consists of 7 different connections. We have power, we have ground, which is a gimme, we have parking lights, we have key side ignition, we have vehicle side ignition, can high, can low. So finding all our connections should be a snap. Alright, here's our ignition node. We're going to grab ignition, can high, can low. It's kind of hard to reach on this model, so Bullet suggested we go ahead and remove the radio for a little bit easier access. But I think I have an image I can show you that'll show the harness a little clearer. Yeah, that's better. There's our pink-white ignition. There's our white-black can high and our white-blue can low. Alright, the next wire we need to find is the parking light wire. Parking light wire can actually be grabbed in 3 different ways on this vehicle. We can grab the negative mux wire from behind the light switch, which is a white-brown. There's also a positive light wire in the passenger kick panel, which is a white-violet. Or we can let the blade module flash the lights for it. We also need to grab power and ground. Power we're going to catch from one of the larger gauge feeds coming from the battery. Ground, we're just going to clean up a spot in the kick panel, use a self-tapping screw, grab us a good ground down there. Alright, I think we're ready to start prepping for install. It's really helpful to get as much of the wiring done outside the vehicle as possible. There are many different ways an installer can prep the system for install. I really prefer to twist, tape, or both the wires into groups according to their connection location in the vehicle. I've seen guys start an install by laying the unit in the floorboard and then making a connection at a time. Unfortunately, that normally equates to something that looks like this, and maybe even something like this. So, I'm sorry, Bullet's over there going, come on, let's go, come on. We're going to let him start prepping the system. Be back in a second. We'll talk about a couple other things. What Bullet's doing right now is he's going to go ahead and clean up all the wires, either that the blade module takes care of via data, or that you're just not using for that install. And that way when he starts to prep, the wires aren't in the way. You'll notice that he's not actually pulling the wires out. I used to be one of those guys that would yank the wires out from the plug. Hey, I'm not using them, but it's never a good idea. You never know when you might need an analog wire. He's also cutting them at different lengths so they don't accidentally touch each other when he wraps them up in the harness. Let's see if I can give you a little bit better example of what he's doing. Alright, when we prep a system using a blade interface, the first thing I like to do is go through the blade manual to determine what functions it will control via data. That way we can eliminate those analog wires from the remote start. Also, we'll go through the remote start manual so I can eliminate the remote start wires that we're not going to use on that particular install. So what that actually does is it takes the amount of wires we have to deal with down from something that may look like this to something that would look more like this diagram. I'll also do the same on the blade module and eliminate unused wires and put the others into groups. The CH4 firmware does have one of the more complicated install diagrams, but If you take the wires one group at a time, it's really not that difficult. Let's go ahead and do all the connections on the car side of the ignition. We have the ignition from the remote start. We have the white and the pink all go together. Then you have a diode that you put in place, and the white black goes to the other side, and then it goes to the ignition, the car side of the ignition. Then we take the wires that go to the plug side of the ignition, and you have the white red and the gray red. Then the only thing we really have left after that is the brown red and the brown yellow. That's can high, can low. So now we've turned a diagram that did look like this into 3 separate, easy to understand groups. There is one more thing I'd like to go over with you guys. It's very important that everyone understands what the symbols mean on the blade manual. A symbol like this with the dot means to connect to the wire. A symbol like this means to jump over the other wire. And a symbol like this means to cut the existing wire. Just wanted to go over that with y'all real quick. I've had some confusion with some people in the past where they connected instead of jumping over, or they didn't cut the factory wire. So it is very important that you understand what the different symbols mean in the manual. Alright, well it looks like Bullet's finishing up the last of his connections. Then he's going to wrap everything up into groups like we were just talking about. And we should be ready to put this thing in the car here real soon. Alright, well Bullet's almost done here, but even before he completely wraps it all up, you can see how he changed this big mess of wires into something that's a lot more manageable, like this. I'm going to let him tape up the rest of the harness, then I'll go through all the different harness grouping again. Alright, well here's our fully prepped system, ready to go in the car. We have our power wires back there and our grounds. We have our parking light wire, and we have everything that's going to run up to the ignition node. Here's the can high, the can low, and our car side of the ignition wire, and our plug side of the ignition wire. That's it. You see how much simpler a well-prepped alarm would be to put in than that big mess of wires we had before. Alright, we're going to go ahead and let Bullet get started on installing the system. Unfortunately, both of us don't really fit up underneath the dash at the same time, so it's really hard to get video of the install itself being done. At this point, all he really needs to do is connect the 7 wires we talked about earlier. What Bullet's doing now is he's taking the remote start brain, put it in the location he chose earlier. He let it hang down so we could still access the blade program button. Then he'll take his prepped wiring harnesses and route them along the factory harnesses whenever possible until they reach their final connection point. We're going to let Bullet work on the car for a little bit, then I'll go behind him and grab some images or some video of what he's done so far. I talked earlier about this is the same install you would do on any Chrysler with the tip start key. This vehicle actually comes as a push to start, but the button itself will come out and the tip start key will still work it. So vehicles 2008 to 2011, even if they are push to start, as long as they come with the tip start key, you can still do this same install on. The only Chrysler that I know about so far that's a push to start vehicle that has a different design than this is the 2011 Charger, but it has a key that looks like this one. Alright, Bullet has already grabbed power and ground. He grabbed ground there in the kick panel. You can see where he's got it all cleaned off with the self-tapping screw. He grabbed power from one of the main battery feeds running into the car, and he's over there grabbing parking lights in the passenger kick panel. He's also already mounted his window mount receiver with the LED and valet in them, Only thing he really needs to do now is make his connections behind the ignition node. He went ahead and pulled the radio out, which will make those connections a lot easier to make. Alright guys, Bullet just shooed me out of the way. He wants to go ahead and finish the connections here behind the radio. Again, this is the plug from the ignition node. It was a little bit harder to reach, being as high up in the dash as it is, so Bullet pulled out the radio so he could get easier access to it, so he could solder to the wires. We have our can high, can low up here, and we have our ignition. The ignition is cut and ran through the blade module. So after this, we're done. So we should be ready to program the kit. Very simple process. Let me let him finish up here and we'll show you that. Alright, we're ready. Another thing I really like about the blade manuals is the easy to understand programming instructions. You'll see on this one, all we need to do is close, then open the door, stick the key in the ignition, turn the key on, the LED will turn solid red. Within 5 seconds the LED will flash blue rapidly. We turn the key off, pull the key out, hit the unlock button on the tip start key, the LED will turn solid blue. We're done. Now we're ready to test it. All we need to do is hit channel 3 twice. There we go. We'll go ahead and let Bullet test the rest of the system, and then we'll put the car back together. Alright, Bullet's completely done with the install. Let's take a look at it. We got our brain tucked way up in there. Be hidden under the panel once the panel's put back in. We got our shock sensor right there. Oh, very clean. Very, very clean. Good job, Bullet. Good job. I could have done a little better, but still, it's a very good job. What? What?
Get away from me.
Dude, I can't. I may be old and a little rusty, but I can still do this stuff. Alright guys, we're done. Bullet's just going to finish putting together the car, deliver it to the customer. I really appreciate everyone's time. Dude, that's enough. I told you, I can still do this stuff. I can still install. Next one, I'll do myself then, okay? If y'all have any questions, please feel free to give us a call or drop us an email, tech@caralarm.com, or our corporate office is 800-554-4053. I really appreciate y'all's time. I'm not putting up with this stuff anymore. I'm out of here. Thanks again.